Hello everybody and welcome to another photography talk, and this time I want to talk to you about the photographic language, and in particular the complexity or simplicity of the photographic language. Every language that we use has different levels of complexity. You can have a very simple language, something that use basic terms and use a very basic grammar and is pretty good to say, I don't know, I need where is the restroom or these kind of things. Then you can have a language that is much more complex and can let you express something that is much more profound. You can use words that are more complex, but that have inside a much important concept. Think of a word like unalienable rights in the USA Declaration of Independence. That's a word that is kind of more complex. You don't use it usually every day, and you don't use it if you have a very limited language, but it conveys an idea that is very complex and very important, and is much better than the idea that where is the restroom. Also is sometime where is the restroom can be much more important in your life. So there are a lot of different level of languages, and more complex is the language and more you can express some complex idea. You cannot express complex ideas and profound ideas with a very simple language. If you have a complex enough language, you can think complex enough ideas, and that is absolutely important. There was a study years ago that I didn't find it right now, but I remember I read about it. There was a test with the very simple populations, villages that were not exposed to something that is culture, so they were very limited with the language, and they had just a few words for the colors. So basically they were not able to identify some colors because they didn't had a name for it. So basically red was just red. We have crimson, we have cherry red, we have all this kind of red, we have all the nuances, and we can express and distinguish all these nuances, but having not the words to describe the nuances implied that the mind was not able to distinguish the nuance. When I read the study, I was pretty impressed, because that is how much the language is influencing you. And influences not just your ability to express something, but also your perception. You need to have a culture to go deeper in the ideas. And to have a culture, you need to have a language to transmit this culture. And more the culture is complex, and more the language must be complex. This is happening for every language, every form of expression. And photography is a language. Photography is a form of expression, and we can convey ideas. As any visual media, photography is able to express much more what is the feeling, what is the sentiment. It's something that is immediate in that way, and is much easier with photography to express that than not irrational thinking. But also when we are talking about sentiments, we're talking about feelings. There are a lot of different nuances, and we can have a complex language and express something that is complex in detail, or we can have a very simple language. The problem with the images we see every day is that the language is became more and more simple. A lot of photographs are just a copy of the same scheme, of the same idea, of the same language. We see a sort of language still existing, if simple but still existing, when we look at photographs made by professional or amateurs with an advanced level. But 90% of the photographs we see every day, especially scrolling on social media, are just images that are created by someone with no knowledge at all about photography. So it's just something that is someone that had a phone and took a picture. So we see the image of the food that you are eating in that moment, and all there are images that have no language at all. It's just an image. It's just a snapshot without even caring about the quality of the snapshot. All those images without the language are not able to express an idea. They express the fact that I'm sitting at this restaurant and eating this food, but you have enough more information in there. If you look at the food photography that was created, especially years ago, right now we have this problem that everybody is trying to do the iPhone image style, but if you look at the photographs that you do for example a food company, when you take the photograph you have to put all the elements that give you the idea of what is the food, what's the history of the food, what is the ingredients of the food, and all these kind of things. So you photograph a vase of pesto sauce, you do it with all the elements that contribute to create great pesto. But a professional has a language, so knows how to use all the elements of the language to create something that is that communicates much more than the simple fact that that is a plate of pasta. So how is composed the photographic language? And the first thing that we have is the light. Photography is writing with light. So the light is one of the best tool that we can use to create something complex. We can use the light that goes to evidence or hide a little details. We can create a mood based on the light. When we talk about the details of the light, I can give you a little example. A lot of years ago I was creating some pictures for the window of a bookstore, and it was Easter time, and I created this image here with Mr. Egg. When I took that image, I discovered how important is the light, because I was reconstructing all this Caribbean style beach in my studio, and it was not working. It was not communicating what I wanted. It didn't sound like Caribbean. Until the moment I discovered that I had to put cold light, because in the Caribbean, with clear sky, the sky is blue, the light is cold. If you put warm light, as I was tempted to do because you think the sun, you think warmth, it didn't work. So to be a professional means, and to have a complex language, means to know exactly the temperature of the light, use the right lights at the right temperature, use the right position of the light, use everything that can communicate more about your subject and the idea that you are expressing. The light is our pen, we write with it, so we need it's our main instrument and we need to know it. Lately, the light is something that people don't even know. I see a lot of photographers with no experience at all in studio, so they have no idea how to use the light to convey an idea. And by the way, that is important also when you use natural light. But the use of the light is absolutely essential, that is done in a proper way. The other aspect that we have in our language is the composition. And the composition is something that lately became so simple that is almost boring. If you look around, there are the usual images made by the normal people that have no composition at all. If they have a little composition, is the composition that is suggested by the app in the phone, and it's always the same. And if you take a look at the images created by amateurs or also a lot of professionals, you see a composition that is very banal. Usually is the rule of thirds. If you go a little bit further, is the gold ratio or the spiral, all these kind of things. It's very simple rule that people follow. A lot of time the language is just okay, you have these 3 standards and you always follow them, and that is absolutely crazy. It's like to try to express something complex in a language that has only I don't know, you have only the choice to use plural or only the choice to use one conjugation of the verb or these kind of things. Imagine a grammar with only 3 options to use. That is something that is absolutely too simple. The composition is probably even more important than the light, or better, they are important together. And to learn the composition is probably the most difficult part when you want to learn to be a photographer, and is the most complex part. And the composition is not just the rule of third. Here I made a video with talking about a book by Arnheim, that visual perception, and that is just the beginning of what is composition, and is such a complexity that you have to study that, because if you want to express something that is a little bit more complex than asking where is the restroom, you need the language. And for photography, the language is absolutely composition, light and composition. Something that I see missing in a lot of photographs, and in this case sometimes it's incredible, because the images made by the casual people with their phone in this matter sometimes are better than the pictures made by pros, because every picture must have a story to tell. And sometimes you see, you know, the person who goes to the restaurant and take the picture of the food and take the picture of the view and these kind of things, sometimes communicates a story that is greater than the story communicated by some professional photographer. And that is another thing that is absolutely important. Do you have a story? Do you have something that what your images is telling to the world? And also there I see a lot of images that are just too simple in their content. Okay, you took a picture and there was a Milky Way. Okay, it's nice, but go further, go deeper in that, and create something that is absolutely filled up with a little story. Another point that is absolutely important is to have different levels of reading the image. If you think about a book, all the great books, you can read them multiple times, and every time you discover something different. You read them the first time and you discover the main plot. You go the second time and you discover something more, I don't know, about the characters, and then you discover something more that is about the philosophy of the world or something like that. And you go on, and you can read the books multiple times and discover always something new. And with photography is the same. If we can put in the image different levels of reading, that is absolutely essential and fantastic. But to do that, the light, the composition, the story, everything within the symbolism of the objects that we portray, all these kind of things, everything must be really put together perfectly and be great in the way. So you need the different levels of reading, and that comes for complexity. If you get a book that is not complex at all, usually it's one level of reading. If you get a book that is more complex, with much more ideas, it's multiple levels of reading. And in an image is the same thing. And when I say complexity and multiple levels of readings, I don't mean something that is absolutely hidden or complex or something like that. you can insert different levels playing with each other or these kind of things. And sometimes can be, I did the example before of the food photography, and yes, you can be the ingredient, and the next time you can see, I don't know, notice something on the background that gives you more the idea of what is the recipe of the pesto. But when you do artistic photo is even more important, and in the case you must have elements that create a movement and create different levels of reading of the image. Another thing that we have in our language is something that is the dynamic of the photo. And the dynamic of the photo, I don't mean to have the usual very horizontal or vertical with the fast things going on. No, I mean inside the composition. And if you want to understand this concept very well, get the books from Rudolf Arnheim. But inside of the composition, you have to create an equilibrium in movement. So your eyes will go from one zone to the other of the photographs. And here there's this image that I created in San Fructuoso with the lady reading, and I spoke about this image multiple times because I love it, but and got the prize, the gold prize at the Analog Sparks. But this image, for example, it makes it work the fact that your eyes goes from the center and the landscape and goes down to the lady reading the book and moves again in the center, and there's always a movement of your eyes. There's nothing fixating, and your eyes go around in there. There's a dynamic. You see a very static photograph in a very square and static frame, but there's a dynamic inside. It's something that creates a movement inside. If you want to understand if you are at the enough complex level of skills or knowledge of the photographic language, check if you are able to create something that is a contradiction inside the language. Every formal language, and if you read the Gödel Bach by Hofstadter, that's a fantastic book about formal languages, but every formal language arrives at the point that is, if it's complex enough to describe complex ideas, it can also contradict itself. So with a normal language, you can say something like I don't know, the phrase down there is true, and down there the phrase up top is false. So this is something that is contradiction. You write something like that, is perfectly correct in the language, but you create a contradiction of concept. And it's the same in photography. If you can create something that is a contradiction, it means you manage the language. What is a contradiction in photography? I can show here an image that I won the Schneider Photo Contest Prize, International Photo Contest, a lot of years ago. It was a fantastic prize, and you have the description in this video. But in this image, there's something that is impossible. I created something that was impossible. Is inspired by Hesher, and is something that is an impossible subject. Is a contradiction inside the image. That for me was a way to know that I had a proper knowledge of the language, because I was able to contradict the language itself. So that was something that is important. But we need to know the language enough also to manipulate contradictions. And it's the same in the language that we speak. If you can create and understand paradoxes or this kind of things, it means that you know the language enough. And if you go in areas where there's no education and where the usual communication is give me my wallet or where is the restroom, you don't have a language that is complex enough to understand contradiction. And understanding when there's a contradiction, be able to create contradiction, understand the contradiction, is essential for our life, because if we don't understand contradiction, we can be pulled in ideologies or in things that are absolutely wrong for ourselves. So that's the fact. I want to add something that is more practical about the language, and is just look at other photographers. I give you some example of photography that I really like and can teach you something that is important. If we are talking about the composition, the one that comes to my mind is Sam Abel, and you can check a video here that I made about one of his books, and it's a book where he explains a lot about the composition. He shows you the images with the wrong composition and the one with the good composition that he took in the world, and you go there and you see absolutely how just a little element that can be a little bit on a side or on the other or something like that is so important. You see that every element must be in the right place. And Sam Abel is a fantastic photographer and is fantastic for his skills to use the composition in an environment that's very fast. So you really learn composition in a way that it's immediate for him, and you look at these pictures and there's a lot of composition also on subjects that are very fast and took in a very fast way. Another photographer that I love, I made a video about him, is Mimo Jodice, Italian photographer, and you see how his language has become complete because not only he knows the light and the composition and all these kind of things, but it also added a level of elaboration in the darkroom that create a kind of a new language for him. So he was able to use movements of the larger and the darkroom to create some effects that add a level of his language of communication. Very creative, and you see how much you must own the language to be able to create something that go much more further than the simple subject. You can see his work on the statues, you can see a lot of pictures that a statue is just a statue. In his photographs, a statue becomes alive. So that's something that is an example, and you can get the video up here about him, and you have all the links to look for his work and all these kind of things. Another photographer I always speak about is Ansel Adams. Ansel Adams, a lot of people find him just landscape, but actually he's not. If you are lucky enough to see his prints, real prints, you go in front of them and you understand how much he was able to know the photographic language, all the technical aspect, and create something that is so perfectly done that wow, it's just attracting you. And I can give you an example with books. If you get a book where great story, something, but it's written not well, it's something that you are not attracted. But sometimes you get some books that are so well written and they can just describe something that is very normal in front of your eyes every day, but are so well written that you are captured by that. And Adams is so good in this technique that gives the same effect. It's like a book with so beautiful knowledge of the grammar and the language that attracts you, also if it describes something that you have in front of your eyes. So Adams for me is another example that you can see for the importance of knowing the language and the complexity of the language that you can create with photography. Another example, opposite direction, is Man Ray. Man Ray knew the language so well that he decided to break the language. He decided to break all the rules and create new rules for himself. Everything was kind of provocation and everything was done in a different way, and that was something that created beautiful pictures and created a different level of reading. You can look at the pictures of Adams and you can see that there's much more in there. You can see there's the story of the photographer, you can see the relationship with your friends, and you can see all these kind of things. And he broke the rules, and the idea was, okay, there are these rules, I don't like them, I break them. And something that is absolutely always nice in this, ironic more than nice, is that when some rules are broken, they create new rules. So basically you look at Moran and he followed his own rules, but they were still rules. But it's fun to see. And Moran is an example that I always use for this kind of things. Another example that is different again, look at Henri Cartier-Bresson. And he was able to create a language about the moment. Everything in his photography is about the moment, and he was able to create this ability to communicate the moment. And he knew the composition and the light and all these kind of things and the exposure and technical rules so well that he was able to forget them and just concentrate himself on the exact moment in life to stop the moment. And this is another very complex form of the language. And if you know the complexity, if you look for something that is more complex, you will express something that is more complex. And you are attracted by the pictures by Henri Cartier-Bresson because they are complex, because there's always something going on in them. There's always something moving. There's always something that attracts you in this idea that you are seeing a moment, but you can imagine the 50 years before and 50 years later of the image. So that's exactly the power of Henri Cartier-Bresson, and it's a very complex language in a different way that Man Ray or Giodice or Abel and so on, but they all use the same elements to create something that is a story with a complexity inside. I give you another example. A friend of mine, Tim Walden, I met him during some workshops here in Italy. He is a fantastic photographer. He does portraits in black and white. And what is incredible in his portraits is that he knows the light perfectly, knows the composition perfectly, and all these kind of things. So he is able, in these portraits, especially family portraits, to put together a story. He is able to show the relationship between the different people that is portrayed in the images and create a dynamic that is a dynamic of emotion between the subjects. And that's something, again, is a very complex language. It's different to the fact that just, okay, here's some people's portrait, you put them down, take a picture. But you know the language, you can arrive at the level where you show in the images what is the relationship between the people inside. You can see the tension, you can see the good part, you can see everything in these pictures. That is just another example of some fantastic language. And we are losing it. I look around and we are losing the language. In photography, we are going down simple and simple and simple at the point that the AI can create a picture for you. And it's became everything so simple that also what we communicate is became simple. And I discovered that on myself. When I converted to digital, I started to take too many pictures, thinking too less about each picture. And at the point I realized that I was losing my language. I went back to film, and now also when I use digital, I'm able to still use the film mentality, and so think about the image before I take the picture. Try to think about the composition, try to think about the story, try to think about all this kind of thing inside the image. It's very difficult, and I look at my picture and sometimes I think, yeah, I made it, it was okay. Sometimes I think, oh no, I was just doing something that is just stupid and banal. But the important part is to try to learn the language. Try to learn everything you can about the language. I remember the first time I found myself in the USA, and my knowledge of the English language was enough to talk and ask where the restaurant was. Then I decided, okay, I want to be able to communicate a little more, and I went on, and in a couple of years I was again around the USA, and I was able to communicate more, and I was able to communicate at the level that was the simple things. It's just you understand the people, you can talk about how the weather is or these kind of things. But it was not enough. So I went on and I started to study again and all these kind of things, and I arrived at the point that I can express this kind of idea in these videos. And by the way, I feel my limits. I look at the videos and I think, okay, I make a lot of mistakes, and I need to go to the next level and do another step to improve what I can express with my English language. I don't have this problem in Italian because I really know the language pretty well. So, but I feel the need to improve. And the same is with photography. If you're doing photography, something that you have to take a look at is not just the number of likes you have on social media, but is, can you use the language in such a good way and improve your use of the photographic language, improve your knowledge of the technique, improve your knowledge of the composition, improve your knowledge of the how to tell a story, and all these kind of things, and work on that. Sometimes it's just is more important to don't take the camera in your hands and just look around, read a nice book, and explore with your mind what is possible, and learn the language and learn the photographic language. Give time to learn the photographic language, and don't take 20,000 pictures every time you go out and there's an event, something like that, and you know, just do that, and no matter, something will come out with my camera is great. No, learn the language, and that will really change your life, and that will change our life in general. And I think that also with the language, the real language for we used to speak, we are forgetting what is a complex language. I'm reading some books right now about cameras from the 1913, and that is, you read that language, is poetry. It's something that is fantastic, it's complex, it gives you all the nuances of, you know, take care of your cameras and all these kind of things, or how to build a camera and these kind of things. And it's so rich of little nuances, and so rich of words that you think, wow, these words are not used for probably 50 years, and you wonder why. You think are words that express a lot. So that is something that we are losing also in the language, and we are not able anymore to express ourselves. And when you cannot express, and you cannot express complex things and complexity, it's difficult to create some, you know, it's difficult to confront ideas and arrive at what is the truth. And sadly, and this is something that, you know, and sadly, and something that I didn't want to tell in my videos, but because I want to stay out of the news and these kind of things, but sadly, you can see that when a person arrives that is able to use the language and to use the rationale to discuss with other people, like Charles Kirk, and the other people don't have the property of the language to discuss and fight back with words, they resort to fight back with bullets, and that is pretty sad. And we need a complex language, we need to know it, and we need it also with photography. If you want to improve the world and improve yourself, improve your language and improve your photographic language. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.